tonight, but we are going to start our meeting off with a special presentation by Delaware Engineering D.P.C. This is the company that we're looking at to start the mapping and the inspection of our sewer collection system. One of the reasons why we instituted a sewer rent last year. So if Mary Beth, are you on the line?
She's just connecting with audio, Madam Mayor.
Okay, is she doing a presentation? Any kind of shared screen?
Yep.
All right, so
Hi, Mary.
hi Mary Beth, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Okay, I just was going to start off by saying that this, what we're doing now is instituting the first part of our project, which is the mapping of our sewers, which is probably something that hasn't been done for a long time. The manhole inspections and the GSI mapping. So I'm going to turn it over to you to give a description of what the services are and how that's done.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Bianconi from Delaware Engineering. And, real quickly, we're a civil engineering firm working in the Lower Hudson Valley. We've been around for over 30 years, and we're working with your neighbors in Portchester. We work in Suffolk and Orange County, and glamorous water and sewer work is really what we do. So as the mayor said, we're looking at a multi-phased project to get a better understanding of the sewer collection system in the village. Folks probably know that you have your sewer treatment is provided by the county. So you have a network of pipes in the village that convey water to the county. That water goes to a wastewater treatment plant and gets treated. The village has about 130,000 linear feet of clay pipe, mostly built before 1960. So it's been around for a while. Back about 20 years ago, about 40% of the lines were lined, 40% of the pipe was lined, but even that was now 20 years ago. And there's sort of a shelf life to these things. So the project involves a couple of different steps. One of them is mapping. That's the first step. We need to know what we have and what we don't have. So we would do the mapping in the field. It will involve staff working and coordinating with Larry and David Charles, to pull the manholes, look inside each manhole, determine what type of manhole it is. Is it brick? Is it concrete? Are there inlets? Are there outlets? Pick the elevation data and map that information with the manholes. And then create a network. So we'll go from manhole to manhole, noting the size of the pipe, the type of pipe, and from that we'll create a GIS map. GIS is Geographic Information Systems. So it's a smart map. Rather than just being what we think of as a two-dimensional flat map that's printed on a sheet of paper, it's in a computer. And it's in 3 dimensions. We can click on any manhole and all the data about that manhole, including pictures of the manhole and all of the information about it will pop up. And we can use that as a management tool to know what we have and be able to make smart investments in the sewer system. While we're collecting manhole data on the sewer system, there's an option to add in mapping the storm sewer system. And I recognize that would be a different funding source, but because we'll have people in the field and they're collecting all this information for very little additional funds and time, we can also map the storm sewer system. So we would be doing the same thing. We're not going to be opening the catch basins, but we would be locating all of the catch basins, making a note of the type of catch basin and any information about it, and then also mapping the outfalls, which I believe you have some of that information, but not all of it comprehensively. And there is a relationship between the stormwater system and the wastewater system, in that our next step after we've mapped everything for the wastewater, the sewer system, sanitary sewer system, will be to comprehensively clean and televise every linear foot of pipe in the village. So it's a process where there's actually an industrial cleaning crew that comes in. It's a separate contractor that's hired. They clean the pipes and they actually send a little camera that's on a tether through the pipes. It's kind of, if you have kids with remote control vehicles, it's a little remote control vehicle. It has a camera on it. It takes pictures and it gathers sound. You might wonder why we want to know what a sewer pipe sounds like, but we can actually identify sources of, like, say, sump pumps that might be connected, because we'll actually be able to hear the pump going on and off as this camera crawls through the pipe. We can see where people's household connections are to the pipe. We can know exactly where they are in the world, because as the camera enters the system at a particular manhole, it will crawl through and it knows it went, 200 feet. And since we've already mapped the system, we know exactly where the camera is when it's taking a picture of, say, tree roots that have grown into the pipe, or where the pipe is broken, or where there may be a connection that appears that it shouldn't be there, those kinds of things. So we clean the system and we send this lovely little camera, this little crawler through, and that then results in hours and hours and hours of scintillating videotape to watch, as you might imagine. We actually do watch every foot of it and make notes about what's going on in the system. And then where it seems prudent to do, not in all cases, but in some cases, we also do smoke testing. And the smoke testing is used to determine where there's cross connections, or where there might be a lack of traps in a building. And the smoke testing is done using a non-toxic, safe smoke that's introduced into a manhole. It can travel, usually with a fan, it can travel a couple of normal blocks. So maybe, 1,000 feet, something like that. And we do notify residents. This is again done by a contractor, but we notify residents in the area so that if they see smoke coming out of a drain, they know what it is. But the smoke testing, again, is used to determine where there are cross connections or those kinds of things. All of this information gets put together in an engineering report that then will recommend improvements, which will be prioritized in terms of what's the most important thing to do to things that would be really nice to do, depending on the budget. And those kinds of repairs we could imagine could involve improvements to manholes themselves, could be sealing them, could be lining them, could be replacing old manholes with new precast manholes to reduce the amount of rainwater that gets into those manholes, could include lining the sewer pipes, or a process called pipe bursting, both of which are ways to take an old pipe and essentially turn it into a new pipe by pulling a plastic sleeve through the old pipe and sealing it in place. It's a very cost-effective means of improving a pipe. And in the long run, the objective of this entire program is to put the village in the driver's seat in terms of information about the collection system and what's going on there. You may have some experience or know folks who've experienced wet spots in yards, those kinds of things, because there's a leaking pipe, or backed up into basements because a pipe is blocked from either oil or grease from a restaurant, or could have tree root intrusion because trees go to where the water is and there's water in the pipe. And also to eliminate those cross connections, which is really important and is part of your code. So that's in the big picture, all of the steps that we're looking at doing. And I think we're looking at carrying them out over a number of years to match your ability to fund this, but to give you a much more robust process of maintaining your system.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. So the first process is mapping the entire system. How long do you anticipate that will take, and can that be done during the winter months?
It can be, and we would anticipate from start to providing a draft map for staff to review is probably in the neighborhood of 6 weeks, largely because it requires some coordination. There may be some days that, folks won't be in the field because weather conditions are not good for popping manholes, those kinds of things. So it's a fairly short timeline. And then we would take markups of those maps, make sure that we have them as accurate as possible, and give you a final product, a few weeks later.
Okay, thank you. So you might have to go on people's private property, so we would have to notify them if there's a spot that you think is private property. And you made a comment about the sump pumps. One of the issues with the sump pump is that it's against code to have your sump pump go into the sewer system. So that is something that would be highlighted, that would have to be corrected going down the road. Another point I just want to make sure that it's clear, you are not mapping the pipe from the house hook up to the street. You're only mapping what would be the village's piping. So anything that's from the village's pipe to the home is not part of this mapping, and no conclusion will be made as to the condition of those pipes. Is that correct?
That's correct. In the mapping phase, no mapping of those connections. Those are called lateral connections. When we do the televised inspection of the pipe, we will actually see where each of those connections is made back into the village's pipe. And we can tell a lot about what's going on with those connections by looking at that. We literally can see those pipes where they connect. We may see that they're leaking. We may see that there's continuously water coming through them. There are things that we can tell from that point, but you are correct. There's no mapping of the laterals that are privately owned and connect homes or businesses to the main.
Because that's the homeowner's responsibility.
Correct.
The pipe busting is a scary term. So what exactly do you mean by pipe busting?
Right. So it's a type of technology. It's pipe bursting. And right. So when we line a pipe, what ends up happening, this is the best description I can give you. So you can imagine you have these clay pipes. They were put in before 1960. They're what we call bell and end pipes, meaning that there's a skinny end, and then the next one has a fat end that connects to the skinny end, and then the skinny end of that one is connected to the fat end of the next one. A lot of times where those two pieces of pipe come together over the years, because you've got friction there, they will break or fracture. As long as that is not a substantial settlement of the pipe, we can do something called pipe lining, where we clean out the pipe. So we clean everything away from the walls of the pipe. We pull essentially what looks like a sock, like a men's gym sock, but it's made of resin. So I'll shrunk it down. We pull it through the pipe, and then we put hot air inside it, and it actually expands and adheres to the walls of the pipe, essentially creating a whole brand new pipe. So that's pipe lining. And to the extent that we can do that, that's the process that we want to use. It's less expensive. And as you said, it's a little bit less scary, right? Because we're not disturbing the pipe that's already there. We're lining it. Pipe bursting is a similar type of process, but when that's done, it's because the pipe that we need to replace has lost all of its integrity for one reason or another. These are clay pipes. So you can imagine if you have, old terracotta pots that you put plants in, they sometimes get brittle. You can pick them apart with your fingers, or like brick, sometimes really old brick. You can kind of pick apart with your fingers, you can hit it with another rock and it'll kind of, flake off. Well, we don't want to line something like that because we're not creating a rigid structure. So pipe bursting is another type of method where these are all called trenchless technologies. We're not digging a big hole in the ground. We're not opening up the streets like sometimes you see. Instead, the pipe that you want to replace has lost its integrity. So you actually fracture it and move it out of the way and replace it, again, kind of with this sleeve concept with a more rigid pipe in its place. So obviously, while all of this is happening, folks in the area where this is being done are going to be notified not to use water for some period of time. It's relatively short, and we usually try to schedule this during very, very low flow periods anyway, so that we can allow that new pipe to get in place.
Right, but that's not the first step of the process here. That is,
Correct.
we're just trying to discover by our first step of the process. So when we instituted the sewer rent program, it was specifically designed to put monies in a specific fund for purposes of mapping and eventually cleaning our sewer system. So what we're here tonight about is the first step, which is the mapping of the system and to find any of these issues in the system so that they can be corrected as we go along. Can you just give us a little bit of a background about your company and your business?
Sure. So we're a civil engineering firm, and we've been around for about 30 years. We are not from Delaware, the state. We're from Delaware, the county, over in the Catskills. We have about 70 people in 5 offices, including offices in Goshen and Red Hook, which are the closest to you guys. Almost all of our work is on the eastern side of the state of New York, and we're dedicated to communities, systems, drainage systems, public buildings like ambulance garages and highway garages, those types of projects. The remainder, the balance of our work, we do about 85% of our work is municipal. The balance is industrial. So we work with industrial clients such as Chobani Greek Yogurt or International Paper, or we work with some of the pharmaceutical companies, and we do water and sewer work for them. And again, we are working locally in Westchester, in Portchester right now, helping them with a very, very similar project, very similar in nature in terms of helping them identify their issues with their sewer system and also with their stormwater system, which in their case are in some places connected to each other, which is a problem.
Great, thank you. And so along with all of this, we've been talking in a topic that has come up at the Westchester Municipal Officials Meetings is the mapping of our storm basins, because catch basins that are not part of the sewer system, that are part of the stormwater system. And this is going to become a big issue all over the county as well, particularly after seeing a storm like Ida, and to see whether the capacity in our stormwater systems here and all over are sufficient and what the conditions of those are. So as part of what we are proposing tonight with our resolution is to include the mapping of this system for us. But I want to make it clear that that's not part of the sewer rent monies that we're using if we go ahead with this, which I think we should, but it's separate and apart. But while we're doing this work, it's prudent to do the 2 systems at the same time for the most advantageous costs and disruption going forward. So I think that that's a great idea. It's going to be needed, and if it's not needed now, it's going to be needed yesterday. So so I think that's good. So anybody else have any questions or comments? Thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate it. Very comprehensive. Trustee DeGusto, I see you, but I don't hear
Yes.
you.
Yeah, I was still on mute. I gotta stop doing that. Okay, I do have a question about the mapping and everything. You were saying before that you go down the main manhole on the ones in the middle of the street to start mapping and everything. Some of our streets are small, and how many people are going to be gathered around that manhole? Because it's going to be an open manhole. Is there going to be some sort of traffic personnel to let cars go around in the tighter streets and even on the bigger streets? Do you have that whole setup available, cones and flagmen or whatever?
So we're going to be coordinating with Charles and Larry, and we're going to have that aspect of this. So we'll have 2 people in the field at all times for safety reasons and for data collection purposes. But we'll be coordinating with the village for that. We call that maintenance and protection of traffic. but we will be coordinating with the village for that. This process is very quick. To the extent that they're on a manhole that, say, is running down the center line of a narrow road, they're going to be on that manhole as much time as it takes to basically open it, take some pictures, take a couple measurements, close it, and move on. It's a fairly efficient process. And again, we'll coordinate. One of the reasons this will take a number of weeks to do is because we'll ensure that, if, for instance, say there's a day, and I don't know if you have this in your community, where we know that garbage trucks are picking up garbage on a particular route or street on a Tuesday, we probably will not be out there on Tuesday doing that street, because that would be a conflict and it would make it tough on your very, very narrow streets. And if we need to provide that type of traffic control, we can. Right now, our assumption is we're going to work with village staff to do that work.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any other questions? At this time, we have a resolution on our agenda